Welcome to the Brite Commerce Podcast with your host, Judd, Dunagan and Carlos Caneja. We have a 4-part series called Web Application Design Breakdown that will walk you through the challenges on quoting, building, and delivering a well-rounded web application.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Brite Commerce Podcast. We are on episode 2. We are your co-hosts, Judd Dunagan with Brite Vessel, and I am Carlos Caneja with Brite Code. And how you doing today, Judd?
I'm doing well. Carlos, how you doing?
I'm all right. I'm excited. It's almost the end of the week. We just wrapped up a few projects, kind of getting or waiting for the next wave of projects, if you know what I mean, right? It's as I like to call it at our agency, it's feast or famine. I mean, we do have some recurring revenue with services that we offer on a month-to-month basis. But for the most part, it's feast or famine, right? You got to go out there every month and just get new projects.
On my side, I have the opposite, which now I've been taking on more projects and see how important it is to optimize and organize projects effectively, particularly in the discovery phase, like we talked about in the last podcast, as well as the strategies and items that need to be really looked at on what is in the project, because we find a lot of unknowns that happen.
Always.
Also have the scope creep situation, which is the kitchen sink syndrome.
Yes,
that agencies know about, where it's
story over game, knowing how to handle scope creep.
You hear from a customer, hey, you're the web developer, you should have known that. And it's like, no,
right.
I don't know your business. So if you needed a particular customization or feature that is not native to, let's say, a platform like WooCommerce, we need to know about that. And I think those can be accomplished by a correct discovery phase.
Yeah.
And really outlining properly what that is. And then, as we talked about last podcast, is, do you bill for discovery phase or strategy phase? And I'm going to say the answer is always yes, when there is requirements that are particular to a customer that are not industry standard practice with code and things like that. So
no, you nailed it. Well, let's do this. Let's kind of do the intro on what today's podcast is about. This is a 4-episode podcast, which covers all the layers of bringing a web development project to life from scratch. Today's podcast is going to focus on strategy. Last podcast was focused on discovery. Today we'll cover more on, once you discover and you understand all the requirements from your customer, how you're going to execute it is really what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
That's really our goal today, is to discuss how you're going to achieve customer goals from that discovery phase. Now, by this point, you should have already gotten an estimate, an invoice out to the customer. But by this point, you're gonna want to get paid here, right? Now, there are those few distinctions that you've already touched on, which is, once you run into these heavily customization type projects, or projects that just require complex functionality that isn't built out of the box in a lot of either core functionality of a platform or plugins or extensions. Now, there you may want to ask the customer if they're willing to pay for a strategy phase, right? Meaning where you're going to collect a few hours up front, you're going to come up with a plan, and you're going to show them, hey, this is what it's going to take, and this is what it's going to cost to implement this. If you want us to do it, here it is. If you don't want us to do it, here's how you would do it, or here's how we would go about it as an expert in the industry. Let's say if it was a WooCommerce project.
Yeah. So, and on the customer side, if you're going to get, a project, it's always good to fill out, let's say, a questionnaire. So the web development company or agency didn't provide one, ask for one. Say, hey, what do I need to provide to you so you can understand my project and my needs? And in most cases, sometimes a questionnaire that's very detailed might take a bit of time to fill out. However, it could save a ton of time and money by properly providing the details that are needed for the project. So if I was in a client going to look for an agency and they did say, hey, we want to bill for discovery phase, no, that is an asset. Everything you're going to get from that discovery phase is is a tangible asset that you can use to, either use the same agency, go to a different agency that you feel might be able to cover the requirements better, but it is worth every penny to have that well-defined document.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, when you go through this document, is it something that you do one-on-one with customers, or do you provide it up front and they fill it out on their own? Because sometimes it gets technical, right? So
Yeah.
you give these questionnaires that make sense to us, but they don't make sense to customers. So how do you usually go about it? Is the question. Do you do a one-on-one with them, or do you send it off and then you do the one-on-one?
Typically in the sales call, we first look at and see what the customer wants. We could answer some of the questions that we might need in that call if they have it. If there's questions they don't have, like just for an e-commerce site, for example, we would ask how many products they have, what is their monthly traffic, how many orders do they have in their database, and what is their monthly order rate, so that we can get a gauge on the size of the server that they might need,
Yeah, right.
what the migration might look like, if it's a redesign and rebuild, which sometimes can be tedious if it's a 200,000 visit website with thousands of orders every month. That is a much larger, much more tedious project, a lot more things that have to be checked and balanced when launching that. So with that in mind, I think you can answer a lot with just a few questions on a sales call. Where it gets, I think, more tricky is if they have an ERP system, they have
Oh
a
yeah,
CRM.
especially NetSuite.
Yeah, they need something to tie into that requires a lot of discovery. So, with the ERP system, you would have business rules. For example, you might have an inventory level that is your purchase order inventory. So, everything that you're currently in the process of purchasing that's going to come in as inventory. Then you have your standard inventory, which is the inventory that you currently have stocked. And then on the website, you might want to show all of that inventory. So you would combine those two. So that'd be a business rule that you would need to know about. So you don't want to launch a site and all of a sudden say, hey, actually, we want all this inventory as well. And then not really know about that requirement, because that would be an addition to the project. So from an
Yeah,
ERP system, there's definitely discovery that needs to happen there. And in most cases, if the client doesn't know, you could be looking at hours upon hours of trying to figure things out for that client about how to go about it, whether it's going to be on the ERP side,
sure.
which is usually more costly,
Yeah,
or if it's going to be, done with code, which then you would bill out and have to estimate. So that's like one example of a discovery process I think that is worthwhile on both sides to have done, as well as be a paid discovery. Another one could be on the client side is if they're very picky for design. If they really have something in their mind they want
yeah,
creatively, that user experience needs to be looked at, and
sure.
sometimes a client may not really understand creatively or subjectively how to build a good user experience online. So you have to coach them and kind of go through that process. So building that wireframe,
Yeah,
those use cases, that's typically a discovery that I always do for a design standpoint. Is the design phase itself could be quoted as its own phase, and then knowing that the phases after, which would be development, would be quoted later, because you would have that map of exactly what needs to be done. A lot of clients don't really like to hear that, because they're like, I want to know what I'm getting into, so I'm going to pay you to do this, but then you might say it's 10 times more to develop. And it's like, well, okay, then provide to me all of your requirements and what you want in this questionnaire. And if they're don't understand, then it's really that's why the discovery phase is there and why you should do it.
sure.
So it's kind of like a fine dance between, and because with projects it's usually a flat rate, right? It's not based on hourly, and
It
you can work.
depends. Yeah, it really depends, right? There are
Yeah.
in some scenarios if the objects are very clear, or the goals are very clear, we can usually say, okay, this is what it's going to cost you, but you got to stay within these rules, right? Like we can build you an e-commerce website for $10,000, but you can't go over 50 products.
Yeah.
Or it will not have an ERP integration, right? Once you say, okay, well, maybe we want NetSuite integration. Depending on what you want there, we will usually do sprint billing based on that. So
Yeah.
we'll give the customer a range because ultimately you just never know how much something's going to cost, right? When you're building something from scratch,
Yeah.
you kind of know, but you don't know exactly, right? So you tend to give them a range. You can say like, hey, this could be anywhere from 30 to 50 hours. For example, we do 10-hour sprints. So we'll say, hey, anywhere from 3 to 5 sprints. And we'll bill
Yeah.
you 2 sprints up front for this phase. And then as we go
Yeah.
through the sprints, we'll give you updates and tell you how many more sprints we're gonna need.
Yeah. I haven't really done that yet. I would like to do that, I think, because what I do is usually try to identify all the requirements and build out like,
Yeah,
hey, this is exactly how we're going to approach this, is what we're going to do, and this is what we estimate the cost. But
sure.
with the way that you're approaching with the sprints is that, people pivot and they change their mind,
All the time. All the
which
time.
you're constantly
And
looking at the
right. And
requirements
that's
saying,
and by the way,
okay,
this
we have to change this again, and then we have to, what do we do? Do we get, since we got a deposit, let's say, or say we got a set amount of time, but now it's taking more, do we ask for more time, or do
right.
we work? So if it was 20 hours, but we found that, hey, after a conversation, it's now 40, but we only got a payment for the 20, and now we're expected to work the other 20, like, or do we ask for that money? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a fine dance. I think
You know,
the
I'm gonna
sprint
give you a
option.
I'll give you a good example of a project we're currently working on. It's a customer that came over from another agency. They sell software. It's subscription based. There's a licensing server built into WordPress/WooCommerce. It's
Yeah.
pretty complex, right? The customer revamped his whole entire website because he was running on infrastructure that's like 10, 15 years old, which is centuries in terms of web. So the other agency couldn't quite finish the project. So what we ended up doing with him was we gave him a flat quote on all the UX UI fixes that we had to do because those were really easy to address and understand what it was going to cost to get those fixed. But on the licensing server side, that has to be looked at. It's got to be scoped. It's got to be maybe rewritten if it's not properly documented, meaning the code. So we
Yeah.
told them, hey, that part's going to be sprint based. It could be anywhere from 4 to 5 sprints on this. At least. We won't know until we start working with it. And luckily, this guy was a software engineer, so he didn't have time to do it himself. He was
Yeah.
very capable of doing it, but he totally understood it. He said, hey, I
Yeah.
approach. Let's do that. So there was a dichotomy there in this project, meaning some of it was quoted up front, flat. Some of it was, hey, we need to kind of go through some discovery here, paid discovery, and understand what the heck we're getting into because we don't know.
Yeah.
This is
I
out
think
of
I think a situation on the client side where you run into issues is, let's say they don't have anybody with technical background on their team,
sure.
or the owner doesn't have technical
Yeah.
background, or the person they had technical background was the person they fired, and now they're coming to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
It's
where
funny.
I
It's funny you
think,
say that. I got to interrupt and tell you this real fast. I got a phone call yesterday from a long-term customer, and apparently her IT company called and said, hey, your SSL certificate is going to expire in 3 months. Now, years ago, that was a red flag, right? If your SSL certificate was expiring in 3 months, you
yeah, but now they have the auto SSL.
now it's auto
Let's encrypt.
SSL, right? Now it's
Yeah.
done through like most companies use Let's Encrypt, which is
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, why do
SSL.
I got to pay for your crap
Right,
when I
right.
have
Which, by
now?
the way, their business model is genius, right? Because their certificates expire every 3 months, so you can manually generate a CSR, go get a certificate, install it, which is a pain in the butt. We all know that, right?
Yeah.
Or you can pay for their API integration, where it'll just happen behind the scenes automatically, which is what hosting companies like WP Engine, Kinsta, that's what they essentially do. Is
Yeah.
they pay API services or API fees to basically automate the whole process, which is genius. But again, lack of expertise, right? This was an IT company saying this, saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
your certificate is about to expire."
Yeah. So yeah, and then so the client basically thought something was wrong with their website, and
They
they
the client basically called me and said, "Hey, Carlos, can you confirm this for us? Because you're our web guy."
yeah,
I shouldn't say, "Hey,
get all
Carlos."
sorts of
Hey,
stuff
hey,
like
hey,
that.
Brite code. You guys are our web people. Can you guys confirm this for us? Kind of thing.
I get all sorts of stuff like that from clients, whether it's renewing their domain,
Oh yeah.
email accounts, and it's like, oh, another spam email. So you turn
Oh
into
yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
pseudo IT person
Yes.
for all their needs. But yeah, so basic, yeah, I would say from the sprint side, let's look at the defined project goals, because I think
Fair enough.
that's
Yeah.
probably like the next
Yeah.
topic. You know, when looking at a web project, you have the branding, the SEO, the site speed, e-commerce, implementation, if I can say the word, sorry, objective and timeline and reporting. Kind of let me, tell me what you think about, you know, each one of those and
Yeah.
how you approach that.
Yeah. So look, before we kind of dive into this, it's important to understand that strategy usually overlaps discovery and vice versa. Discovery
Yeah.
will overlap strategy, right? All these phases overlap each other for the most part. And sometimes you go back, you might be in design and you may have to go back to discovery, right? Because something came up that was out of scope.
Yeah.
But in terms of defining those project goals, this kind of ties a little bit into that questionnaire, right? When you have that initial call with the customer, or
Yeah.
when the customer wants to build an e-commerce site, let's say, there's a lot of things you're going to ask up front, right? Like, hey, do you already have branding, right?
Do you have a logo?
Yeah.
Do you need a logo?
Oh no, we already have a logo. Great. So we sort
Yeah.
of need to match the UX UI, at least the color palette around this logo somewhat, right?
And if they don't have a logo, then you have a whole nother phase you got to
And
get through.
then
That's
then you got it. That's a great time to say, well, would you like a logo?
yeah. And if they say no, I will tell them you need a logo. Like, we can't build a website look and feel without some sort of brand guidelines that we have to work from,
Yeah.
colors,
I
fonts.
I
And
would
if we
say
have to
rough.
identify that, we can, but you have to have some sort of web style agreement. Like, hey, yeah, I feel like if someone wants the site, and I've had this happen, not rarely, but if they want a site without branding or they don't have branding, they're not they're not well seasoned in business. You have to have a
I
logo.
understand.
You
Yeah.
have to
I
have a
I,
brand.
I would say like most small businesses, local businesses, mom and pop shops,
Yeah.
they're not really very concerned on branding. Uh,
Yeah. I would, yeah, I'd
Bigger
say,
customers, they're the ones that are willing to pay
yeah. Well,
professional designer to design a logo, uh, create some type of branding guide. Those are the
yeah.
companies that are willing to spend money.
And I think that's where, like, if you're a business starting out, I'm just going to say you want to avoid, I think, small businesses like that, because the job will be 10 times longer and they won't
Always, always, yeah.
appreciate what you can provide to them.
You're right. You're right.
I think an investment into a brand is so important. It's your beginning. It's the beginning of your company. It's what your company is, what it looks like, its voice, everything. And if you don't do that right the first time, you probably won't get anything right thereafter for a very long time. So I recommend that. And I think I'll let you go through the other stuff, about the project goals. So for
Anyway, yeah, that just kind
good
of like
branding,
we're kind of like going above and beyond branding now. But again, this is just sort of like the things that I like to ask during a discovery slash strategy phase, right? For example, like SEO. Do they have a current SEO footprint that they need to maintain?
yeah,
Do a lot of their leads or conversions happen through the SEO channel?
yeah,
If so, it's very important to retain that, right? So you sort of have to define and strategize how you're going to make that leap over.
yeah.
You're switching platforms. You
It
have to
also takes a lot longer.
it,
If they have an SEO strategy in place that you don't want to break or mess up,
yeah,
hopefully you're not well, first, if they don't have, if they're going from one platform to another and they have like a .html in their URL, that's a big problem, because you have to then do 301 redirects
yeah,
and there will be a little bit of hit. You have to explain to them clearly what's going to
yeah,
happen from an SEO standpoint, that that you don't have a magic ball, and can tell them exactly what's going to happen, but you can tell them, hey, based on industry standard practices and what other people have seen, you can maybe see a 2 month drop. But yeah, so SEO is I think a huge question to ask, in particular for e-commerce businesses that are established
yeah, yeah.
for
Typically, here's what we like to do if the customer has a strong SEO footprint. What we like to do is we like to go back maybe 2 years of analytics, and
Mhm.
determine the top landing pages, right? In terms of
Yes.
organic traffic.
Yes.
We also like to look at Search Console. We like to look at some third-party tools like SEMrush or Ahrefs and kind of determine their backlink profile so we can determine
Also, the
frequency.
current speed of their site too, I
Oh,
think is
speed
highly
speed is also
important.
a huge factor. Yeah, more than
So,
ever today. But just before we touch on that, we like to define that backlink profile, right? So that when we launch this new website, a lot of those backlinks don't point to 404 pages. They 301 redirect to actual
oh
pages.
yeah, yeah. So, and that's the other thing too that it's always it's a little bit of a thing you might have to worry about too if the SEO wasn't really done right, but they do have an SEO footprint. You want to do all the best practices, but I've seen it happen sometimes where you do all the best practices and it still gets a hit and then it
Oh,
goes back
sure.
up.
Yeah, that's very true.
So,
Very true. Yeah.
from when I think of SEO, is building a website, we make sure that they have the correct markup. We do look at schema, we look at a few things. So an audit. So I guess a perfect example would be: Do you offer an audit? You offer the audit after you start the project, correct? Like, because that's an SEO audit, I would say. You didn't do like a mini one, not
That's
like,
a
hey,
great
this is
question.
a
Yeah, it's not a full
plan.
audit. It's funny because we're now in the process of doing an SEO audit for another company, but it's completely different, right? It's a company that paid somebody to rebuild their website, and they want us to audit the UX UI and the SEO, right? Because their sales have plummeted. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that audit is probably very similar but slightly different.
So I would look at there's ways that so this is what I learned from an SEO audit and working with customers is that I've ran into projects where some sites had black hat practices done,
Oh, sure.
like CTR manipulation using like a tool like SERP clicks.
Oh, I see.
And I took over the project and things went down. And then I literally found out because I reached out to previous employees of the company. Hey, what do you guys do for SEO? I have this one client, I can't figure it out. And he's like, oh, they use SERP clicks.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was told. So immediately I used that product and their results went right back to normal.
Wow.
So I think from an audit standpoint, this is for people that I just throwing this out there as like, hey, I've done everything right. I just launched a site, but the
It
SEO went
happens.
down.
It does happen. Yeah.
You have to consider black hat practices and practices from other SEO companies, like acquiring inbound links and then taking them away. They paid for those links and then and you don't know about them. So that's SEO is a huge topic.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
It's funny. It's funny you're
especially
tapping into
if they
black
have
hat.
a very big footprint. I always pray that they have an SEO firm that I can work with because it's easier. Like I had to launch another site and there's an SEO firm that I'm working with. So as long as I do everything that was already there, I'm okay. And as
Sure.
long as they in the QA process, they
Yes.
check it,
You're right.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
But when you take on a site, SEO is a big one because you're responsible. Then you inherit whatever
Yeah.
problems that will cause.
And
So it's very important. And you brought up a good point. Like their sales plummeted. Can you give us kind of an idea of how they plummet? Was it by did you have you checked yet? Is it like the CTR that changed? Is there inbound
sure.
links that dropped? Like, did you find an actual pattern?
Well, usually it's oh, this is the day we went live with our new website.
Yeah.
And you can just see the drop off right there.
Yeah. So
And,
typically
and,
I would
and I mean,
say like,
look, it's not like a cliffhanger, right? It's not a dramatic drop off, right? But you can just kind of see the analytics
yeah,
show less and less
I've
conversions,
had
right?
that happen though, and it took 6 months and it just magically went back up.
We had a customer a few years ago that went from Magento to WooCommerce through another agency. And listen, by the way, I don't want to make it sound like we fix everything and we're 100%. We made mistakes too. And
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk about some of those. But this is another scenario where a customer came over to us um, from a Magento site that was constantly getting hacked, and they were in a position where they couldn't upgrade it.
Yeah.
They got their site redone in WooCommerce. It was done by a one-man band, meaning a small web shop. And the guy knew WordPress, but he didn't really know e-commerce. So the minute they went live with that website, their conversions just died because all the traffic was organic. And
Yeah.
they actually came over to us from the Woo Expert marketplace. Uh,
Yeah.
and right away we told them, say, look, there's so much work to be done here right now that we're not going to be able to fix it in time. We're going to need we're going to need to bring back your old website,
Oh,
and then we're going to need to rework this whole setup because a lot of it needs to be rewritten. It's not properly done, and
yeah,
yeah.
that's
So
awful.
the big concern was the security issue, right? The big concern
Yeah,
was
you
going
know,
back.
it's
Wait, hold on,
I
hold on.
that
Let me
you
finish it.
probably
Let me finish it.
yeah, yeah,
The big thing was going back to Magento because Magento. I don't know if you remember the Magento bug where credit cards were getting sniffed out of the checkout page. They were getting scraped.
yeah, yeah,
That's the issue they had. Make a long story short, we were able to put them behind Sucuri, their web application firewall. Uh,
yeah.
and that mitigated all the hack attempts, or most of them anyway. So we ran this site on Magento for a good 3 4 months while we looked at his website, re-architected his website, because his website was like 70 80% there visually. It's just
Yeah.
the SEO, the interlinking was just
So yeah, you got to look at the user patterns from bounce rate to CTR, like the certain because those could like there's certain yeah SEO is such a fickle beast when it comes to all the little signals and all the weights that could happen from the user experience to off page SEO. So yeah, it's a scary. It's not. It's
yeah.
nerve wracking to
It really is. It really is.
it is.
You
I
need
mean, if
you
you're
need
going from one platform to another, that's where it's nerve wracking.
oh,
If
and
it's just
I tell
rebuilding
people
a
up front.
WooCommerce website, usually you have the right links, you have the inbound links,
Yeah,
everything the same,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's just a matter of speed. You just got to be fast, and you have to cache, and you have to do that. So that it's
Sure.
just the speed. But and that's for the most part. I think I don't deal with much projects as you do. I think when it comes to probably bringing over from Shopify to WooCommerce to Magento and all that,
Yeah.
but man, I feel for you. I think I'd lose the rest of my hair
Yeah, I
having
mean,
to.
look, I tell people up front, and it's funny, we just quoted a I'm sorry, UX UI redesign for a WooCommerce website. And luckily, they're sticking to WooCommerce, but the guy who runs it for them, their web developer, he's like he's like a front end and back end type developer, probably more on the back end because the site runs incredibly fast.
Yeah,
But he doesn't. They don't know how to design, right? They don't have a designer, so they're reaching out to us to design a new theme and basically write out the theme for WooCommerce. And I told him up
I,
front,
I
I'm like, I
I've
told
been
him,
trying.
hold on,
I don't
here,
know if you're.
hold on, hear me out. I told him up front, I said, hey, the great news is that your URL structure is not changing because you're staying on the same platform.
Yeah, that's always the best news. But you mentioned about build real quick, and not that we're going to go into a huge thing with build, but I started working with Oxygen Builder. Have
Uh-huh.
you ever heard of Oxygen?
No, no, doesn't ring a bell.
Look up Oxygen Builder. It's a pretty lightweight builder. I think works pretty well. It's not like doesn't have all the cool modules, but it loads super fast.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So yeah, I thought I'd throw that out there. Check out
Well,
because
I tell you what,
you're
we use a lot of Elementor and
that's what we use Beaver Builder.
Beaver
I mean, like
Builder.
my team loves well, I have some that like Elementor better, some like Beaver, but
Yeah,
clients love Beaver Builder. It's just
yeah.
easier for them.
It is. Yeah, Elementor is a little harder to work with.
But Oxygen's much harder to work with, but it gives you it when it comes to a very large site, I think it would work better.
What
It's for speed.
is it more extensible? Oh, it's more built around speed. Is that because I was gonna
It's
say,
built
look,
around speed and it's more customizable, I guess you could say, from a code standpoint. It's
yeah,
not
so
like,
it's more
hey, this is your
extensible.
builder and this is what you get. It's you can do a lot with it, I think, to
I
to
say.
to make it optimized.
Um,
So
what is it?
I'm doing our site in it just because a creative director wants to build in it. He's like, let me take a stab at it, and I'm like, all right, go ahead. So he's doing the new Bright Vessel website design in Oxygen Builder, and I've been
Nice,
watching it, and I like it.
nice. That's cool. Yeah, we just over the years we built on everything, right? I mean, look, back in the day, we used to code the templates directly, right? Because that's your only option, right? Uh,
Yeah.
the HTML editor.
I, yeah. So like Gutenberg, like a lot of people use Gutenberg or they'll do custom fields, and it's like you can only update this and that, which works for a large site. I can see why a large site needs it, a very large site, but you can still use Elementor with a 500,000 visits a month website on a properly
set up.
provision
Yeah,
server.
we use that in conjunction with WP Rocket.
Yeah, WP Rocket. So I
And,
have
it minifies all your JavaScript and
I
CSS.
I had
And
a client that wanted me to that made me change from WP Rocket to Cloudflare because they just think Cloudflare was better. And right now I'm in the process because they don't like the rating that Cloudflare is giving them for speed. I literally turned off Cloudflare and I put it back to WP Rocket, showed the score, and he's like, "Oh, that's awesome. The score looks great." And I'm like, "Okay, I just turned off the Cloudflare and put back WP Rocket for that one website because he has like 40 websites." And it's just like show it's like sometimes things, me personally, I think with WordPress, WP Rocket works better than a Cloudflare. I think, and it depends
yeah,
on your
I gotta
site
tell you,
too and what you have in it.
they're two different things. To me, I feel like you need both, right? It's
Yeah, so we do. We use is a combination. So the caching and the minification is better with WP Rocket.
correct.
Cloudflare is better for the
CDN.
bot, stopping the bots, and they have
Yeah,
a couple turbo rocket settings and
yeah,
things that you
yeah.
probably know a little more
Maybe do
about.
WebP,
Yeah, WebP, that
which is
too. So we leave that
which is now
on, but
getting easier. It's been a pain in the butt, but it's now getting easier.
yeah. So hey, we're bouncing around. Let's get back to so we went through SEO, site speed. I think we talked about site speed
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Anyway,
Um,
so something else you want to ask when you build a website is or any kind of web app, is it going to have an e-commerce implementation? Because
yeah,
customer requires e-commerce.
that's an easy question though.
It's an easy question, but it opens up a whole new door,
Oh
right?
yeah. Well,
How
I
many
mean, it's a whole
products?
new
Yeah, how
process.
many products? Integration.
Yeah.
How are you going to ship things? How are customers going to pay for things?
Yeah, I think we both. And what is and how? So that's a good question. How many brand sites do you do versus e-commerce sites now?
We mostly do e-commerce.
Me too.
Brand
Like
sites is like
honestly, I don't
here and
never
there,
do brand sites anymore.
here and
Like
there.
98% is all e-commerce, probably because we're
Yeah.
what we're in.
No, not only
But
that. Look, creating a brand site or informational site, it's so commoditized. Like anybody can do it.
yeah, you doing
Especially,
Squarespace,
I was just about to
all
mention that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Weebly, Squarespace, all these
So,
platforms.
so that's a good thing for agencies listening right now. If you're just getting into the business, you know, brand sites are quick jobs, maybe quick, little jobs, but but they're probably going to be primarily small businesses, not large businesses. Large businesses are going to go to large agencies for a brand site in most cases.
Oh, sure.
I did an Amadeus, which was a brand site that was 10 different layers of approvals. I gave them a great deal, but after I was done, so it's like, depending on the client, a brand site's probably, like you said, going to be a local business. Where e-commerce sites, I think it's funny how the majority of businesses have turned to e-commerce. Because if you remember when you first started out, and I've known you since 2007, or e-commerce sites were only like big businesses that were just getting started.
It was difficult to do e-commerce.
Now everybody that sells a product or any kind of product of any kind, most likely has an e-commerce site. So
Not only that, it's the wholesalers too that want to do direct to
wholesale,
consumer
yeah,
engagement.
that's all I've been doing this year is wholesale,
No,
wholesale
but no,
B2B
what I
business.
mean is like companies that usually just wholesale or manufacture, they don't deal with the consumer. Now through the web, they want to do that. So they want to have both channels. They want to have that B2B channel
Absolutely,
and
yeah,
that B2C channel.
yeah. But you know what? And then some don't want to even handle B2C. It's funny, like some people love certain types of customers. I prefer B2B customers over B2C.
It's funny
Um,
you say that. I enjoy working on B2B stuff too. Um,
well, the reason I do is it's straightforward. It's not like B2C
no,
is
no,
complex because you have that marketing level that you need in there as an agency where, you know, they need to make that into a profitable website where a B2B just needs it a functional website that can
I just
sell because they already have that customer
I,
base.
I like the tax exemption. I like the tier pricing. I like the ability that you can
Yeah.
create a form for potential sellers or buyers. And
That and you learn like what I've learned, like it's been awesome to learn because it's a great thing to have in your tool belt is just the ERP integrations and those that there's a lot to that, but that is a safe place to be. B2B is a safe place to be. I think if you acquire the knowledge to tap
Yeah,
into any
I like
ERP
it.
system,
Yeah, I
you're
definitely like.
doing well.
I say, yeah, no,
So
why I think we enjoy B2B more. It's more challenging when you think about it. There's a lot more going on than B2C. Think
yeah,
about it. B2C is add to cart,
I
view
don't.
cart, checkout.
I'd rather have those challenges than have client challenges
Right.
from a B2C customer. One that doesn't know what they want, doesn't know the requirements,
Right.
like that. That
Yeah.
that to me is such,
That's
because I'm a guy that likes to go, 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 go.
yeah.
And you can give me a challenge in a very, complicated task structure, what I need to get done. And I find that, oh, I like this. I'm building
Yeah.
something. Where if
Yeah.
I
No, you're
have
right. You're right.
someone I'm just trying to
You're right.
convince all day how to change something or why they need to change it, that drives me nuts,
You know that the wholesaler definitely knows what their list of the requirements are.
Yeah,
They know. They'll tell you up
almost
front.
always.
Yeah,
They're
they'll tell
telling
you.
me usually like,
Here's
hey,
what they're
don't
telling you.
forget this.
Yeah, here's what they're telling you. Say, hey, this is how we do it today in the physical world. How do we digitize it? Like this
Yeah,
is what we need.
yeah. And so and usually with the, and that's another thing with the ERP, every ERP system I've integrated to, well, with the section of exception of the ones that are proprietary, they all usually have a tech team on that side that can help you. Usually. If they don't, that's why I have one that's literally said, "Oh, we have no one that knows this platform on our team," and I'm like, "You gotta find somebody because it's not going to be
No,
us. We're not."
I love this is the one I love the best is when they ask us, which CRM should we use?
Uh,
Or or which ERP should we use? And we turn it right back to them. We say, hey, there's a lot of them out there. We can suggest a few, but ultimately it's up to you to decide which one suits your business best.
yeah, yeah, and that's a hard one too because I mean, so there's Salesforce, HubSpot, the two, but like people, I have people have mixed emotions with both of those. I'd love. I use SalesFlare, which is a simple one. It's real
I see.
easy. Or even using our project portal that we use, FreeCamp. It even has a CRM built in, which I
Nice.
don't use. I should, but technically, that's another thing. You start to get into a thing where you're looking at the client and what they're doing and giving them consultation on that stuff. So it's not even the website at this point. It's like
Yeah.
how do I move around all my data to my sales reps,
Yeah.
to my ERP system? So yeah, it is a funner project where you have many things to do, and it's a longer project too. So if you're in the project world and you're going to stick there without the residual income, B2B is a better place to be because you just have it turns into a basically like a residual kind of client. Every month you're doing something
No,
for
no,
them.
you're so right. It does.
Yeah.
They're definitely more fruitful customers per se.
Yeah.
So look, we've kind of covered the definition of the project goals, right?
Yeah.
Now it's more of a question of how are you going to report to the customer, your progress. Let's kind of talk about that. We're going to define objectives. We're going to create some milestones. You wanna kind of start on that? Like what's like your default go to for customer
So
communication?
I do a design phase, a development phase, and a post-launch phase. Try to make it in 3 different phases, pretty easy.
I say,
Design phase is going to be, if I don't have a discovery phase, like we talked about,
yeah,
design phase is just going to be basically building out the wireframes, building out the web comps,
you're there.
outlining, everything that's needed from if there's custom development in wireframing. And then it moves on to the development phase. So once that design phase is approved, that architectural deck's approved, it then goes to the design phase, or sorry, the development phase.
Yeah,
And then my developers know exactly what needs to be done with, the goal is not having them ask questions. Hey, should it work
yeah,
this way or should it do that? Because
yeah.
that kills a lot of time in
And
general.
with tools like Figma, it's gotten a lot easier, luckily, right? Like remember
Yeah.
on the Adobe XD and Photoshop days? Like you
I,
could
I didn't like it. I did everything usually in Illustrator and Photoshop. I never really liked XD. I just didn't
oh, I'm
think it
sorry,
was like,
that's I got my terminology. XD is the new version, is the Figma competitor.
well,
It,
no, Adobe bought
yes,
Figma.
yeah, but
Oh, before it was XD.
before
Yeah.
Figma was bought or purchased by Adobe, XD's purpose was to compete with
But it
Figma.
was a web development kind of like you build out just like Figma, but it was actually more like Dreamweaver a little bit. Like you could build out an HTML build from XD. Where Figma, you can do that as well, but I felt like XD was trying to mold Dreamweaver. That was like the new Dreamweaver. So it did a lot more than Figma, I think, from a development standpoint.
I see.
But Figma, I think is so you had Photoshop, you had Dreamweaver. I think XD tried to combine both Photoshop and
I
Dreamweaver,
got
right?
you. Yeah. What I meant to say was Illustrator and Photoshop days. We've come a long way since that, right? Because
Yeah, so that's what I use. You're right. So the wireframing was done in Illustrator, and the design was done in Photoshop. And so, but Dreamweaver, that's why I think like Photoshop, Dreamweaver, Illustrator, it's kind of like XD in a way for web developers, so they don't have to use all three programs. And that's what Figma did too. And I think that's the reason they bought Figma. Adobe did, because Figma does. And also, when I look at, a lot of builds that are being done are not built like straight up just code based. Like, I'm going to build this website, it's not going to be on a CMS. So I think that's always been there, kind of lingering. Like, how do we satisfy everyone? Because a lot of people are building in WordPress and they don't need to export all of this except for the imagery, fonts and that. So
assets,
that's
yeah.
something. So it'd be great, and I think I need to look into it. If Figma does too. It would be great if one of these programs could just do right to a WordPress theme.
I think there
You
are
know,
some extensions out there, but it's
they're not there.
this was kind of like there was a few plugins for Photoshop that would sort of do that if you layered content properly. But
Yeah,
listen, Judd, what happens when you try to automate something?
it sucks. Yeah,
It's
you got to do
there's
everything.
all
It's well, and then you have all the different
yeah.
tools.
Now there is have you worked with Webflow?
I have, and my son got me into that, but it is it's like a Squarespace. You don't own your stuff.
Well, no, you don't, right? It's proprietary. So, but that's the beauty of it. It's just like you can design however you want within
But you
Webflow.
can't move. Like, the thing is,
It doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for us, but
yeah,
it's
you can't move fast, man, and you got a lot of limitations, because my son got
correct.
me into that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then, like, immediately as he did, as you start working in it, he's like, yeah, it's so much easier in the
Yeah, it
WordPress
doesn't work
builds.
great. It works great for mom and pop stores in conjunction with the design shops that just have a strong UX UI designer and they don't want to develop. It's
Yeah,
perfect for that. But other than that, once you start getting into customization and extensibility, that
yeah.
falls apart very quickly in that sense.
So other, if we're talking about like a technology stack that we use, talk about phases, the three that I like. Do you have this typically the same thing, or what? Like, tell us about your
Yeah, well,
phases.
to me, technology stack is more about well,
No, I
we
mean,
kind of
like, I'm saying, tell us. I have the three that I do, which is design, development, and
yeah, which
post
ties into
launch.
the that ties into your milestones.
Yeah. So
So we
what are
essentially
your like phases that you
we're
typically do?
it's no different than yours, man. It's the same stuff. Now
I got you. Okay.
there are exceptions. If we have a project that's very complex, we'll usually set up one-on-ones with the customer bi-weekly or weekly.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
that's more for like enterprise type projects, projects that are really complex. There's a lot of collaboration between both companies, meaning, they're doing a lot of QA, QC on their end. They're bouncing it off people internally and they have more requirements. They're coming
Yeah.
to us to say, hey, where are we on these tasks? We're coming back to them and saying, hey, where are you on these assets that you owe us? Right.
Yeah. I definitely think you're more. I've been more on the web management side for a long time. I think you've been way more into complex projects than I
But
have.
I go back and forth, Judd.
Yeah.
I'm like a fruit fly. I'm all over the place. I'm here, I'm there. It's like
I'm
what
trying not to be. I think I'm trying to get to a nice, comfy position, but yeah, it's an ever-changing world, and you
believe me,
gotta like.
I love to do that. I just when I do that, my company falls apart.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I'm trying to get to the residual
I got you. I got you.
comfort
Yeah, yeah.
spot,
I got you.
so plug-in development and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But
In terms
so,
of objectives and milestones, that pretty much covers it all. We're very much
yeah, okay.
there. But
Technology stack then.
technology
What do we
stack
got?
to me, that is more like, you're gonna tell the customer, especially enterprise customers, you're gonna tell them how you're gonna build this stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Well, so
Because
you're gonna have and I'd say with customization, that's not really part of the technology stack. I mean, it is. It's because you're customizing, build a custom plugin. But
no, to
let's
me, it's
look
more like
at WordPress and WooCommerce specific plugins and platforms that you like to use
uh,
on a main basis.
I'll give you a good example why this is something you want to disclose and talk about up front. We have a customer that has a booking engine. It's written in .NET. It was written roughly 10 years ago. They wanted to redesign it. We said, okay, yeah, we can redesign it for you. Not a big deal. But now what happens when we have to code it out? They don't want to change platforms. They don't want to go from .NET to like PHP or
Yeah.
React, whatever framework they might
Yeah.
think they want to use. They want to stay on .NET. So that's why it's important that you align those technology goals to say,
Yeah.
hey, once we design this, how do you want us to build it? And if you want it done in, I don't know, Ruby on Rails, which we don't do, we would have to turn the project down and say, sorry, we'll have a Ruby on Rails developer.
So the way I quote, I try to avoid customization. And that's a tough one because you can build a completely custom website, right? But the cost is astronomical compared to
It
being
is,
able to
yeah.
use a plugin set.
Yeah.
So what I typically do is kind of like what you said from a sprint aspect, like, we're going to do 3 to 5 sprints. Well, we're going to use 10 plugins here. It should cover every requirement. Full disclosure, here's the plugins we use. Here's the website links to the plugins. Take your time to look at them and understand them a bit because these will be the features on your website. And then from that, if something needs to be customized, a feature's missing, that might take, 6 to 8 hours to customize it, and it can be done, but that's not in the quote right now. So from a technology stack, I do pick a few different types of plugin. I think we talked about these before, but like Beaver Builder, Elementor, started to work with Oxygen. That would be like a builder. Gravity Forms is my go-to form system. I really don't use, or actually Ninja Forms
I
I
love
use
Gravity Forms.
too.
Yeah.
Ninja Forms is good as well. I use it in particular for one customer that it works really well for what we need. You also need an SEO platform. So Yoast is one, but I actually prefer all-in-one SEO right now if I'm going to pay for
Oh, you
one
mentioned that. Yeah.
because it has everything in it. It's all in one, right? Where Yoast, you have to pay you have to pay hundreds of dollars, not just, for the pro, you have to buy everything that, from
All the
local to,
modules.
yeah, all the modules. And it's like, okay, I have everything I need here and all in one. Why would I pay Yoast double for the same features? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's not
I know
like
what you
it's
mean.
doing anything different other than
No, I
doing the
know.
screen. They do the
No,
same thing.
I know.
So
Yeah, I know. The only pushback I would give you there is, if you get into this world where you start changing plugins and process, you're bound to have more issues internally. For a while, we couldn't
yeah.
our head properly wrapped around a good web builder or backend, until we said, okay, let's just go with Elementor here, and
Oh,
that's
that's
what
what we
we're gonna do.
do.
Yeah, because
Yeah, we use the same ones.
for a while, every site we had was built differently. So when we went
Yeah,
to
same
updates
same
or
here.
it created a problem whenever we had to update. And I think
Well, imagine this. So
it made it more difficult to get it done.
I manage, around 400 or so websites. So imagine taking over websites that have all different stuff, like all different themes.
Yeah.
So the good news is that, we rebuild most of those over time because they just want to rebuild or something. So
Sure.
so I would say the majority of them are either Enfold, Elementor,
Infold, yeah.
Builder, and we have a couple that are just different themes. There's no real builder; it's just a theme,
I know what you
or
mean.
a few. But yeah, so we, form system, SEO, visual editor. Those are the 3 main things that you'd have in the technology stack. You would also have then, if it's e-commerce, what tools you use, and I prefer. It really depends, honestly. I use a lot of different types of e-commerce, you know, plugin companies to use. Like it depends on the certain task. So if it is booking or subscriptions, I do go with the base WooCommerce booking and subscriptions plugin. Recommend not going off the reservation for that. But if it's like shipping, there's like Plugin Hive that has a multi-shipping plugin that has every
Oh, that's nice.
carrier in
Yeah.
there. So it's better than paying individually for every real-time shipping
Now,
for,
is the granularity the same? Do you have the same features?
you have everything should be the same. It's under Plugin Hive, that multi-carrier shipping plugin it's
I
called.
got you.
So that works really well from shipping. So that satisfies that. From a tax standpoint, I always suggest TaxJar over Avalara
Oh,
just
really?
because it's more intuitive for the customer. It's not as I think it's a bit easier onboarding process, at least in my opinion. Now, that's not to say that Avalara doesn't work really well for larger enterprise clients, which they do. So if it's a bigger client, I would recommend Avalara. Smaller business,
How do you
TaxJar.
how do you approach e-commerce clients on taxes?
I tell them, like, you look at, you can basically so you need to talk to your accountant on what you want
Or
to
or,
do,
or CFO?
because there are new rules now about in like 4 different states you have to collect tax on. So if you're selling in those states, just know that you're required to collect tax. And if you're not, it could bite you in the butt at certain case. So having a tax compliant software that does your reporting and does your filing is it's worth every penny, particularly if you have sales. Now, if they had 1 or 2 sales, I mean, it's hard for them to justify that if in that one particular state that needs to collect sales tax. But if it's a larger company, they have to have a tax compliance software. There's no way around that. I mean, you'll hate yourself later if you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
usually like to approach the whole thing with the whole nexus, wherever you meet nexus.
Yeah.
But ultimately you got to talk to your finance person, your accountant,
Yeah.
your CFO. Whoever reports to the Department of Revenue is who you need to deal with, and
Yeah.
know what states you have to charge tax on, and also know that, hey, if you're going to use WooCommerce, you get one by default, which is included. If not, you either have to get Avatax or what's the one that you like to
Tax
use?
jar.
TaxJar, yeah. Which it's
Yeah.
funny, we sort of gravitated towards
There's
Avatax.
nothing wrong with that. Yeah, they
No, it's
both
just
do the job.
I think we used TaxJar when it first came out, and we had some issues with it. And I don't know, we met the Avalara people at a WordPress event, and
Yeah.
that was the reason. Again, it goes back to like stick to one thing and know that one thing versus trying to work with all these different plugins and have a potential for error because you're involved in too many different plugins.
Yeah. And then we talked about WP Rocket as a caching plugin. That would be
Yeah.
another one.
Oh
Having
yeah,
made
yeah,
sure you're properly cached.
yeah,
So, and like I said, from a WooCommerce standpoint, there's Barn 2K. I like their plugin set for different things. Yith Themes, I use their plugin sets. We also have Brite plugins, our own plugin sets for
yeah.
pre-orders and deposits, which you're welcome to have a license if you want to check it
Oh,
out
thank
there,
you, sir.
Carlos.
Very, very kind. That's not something I hear every day.
And I'm trying to think of other like aspects of plugins that would be needed. There's
Yeah,
just a ton
just
of
if you're
little tiny
talking
features
since
that might be needed.
technology stack goes into what kind of software you're going to be using for the customer, and you just brought up licensing. Let's talk about that.
So I have unlimited license. I usually use everything that I already have an unlimited license for. So I can save that for the client as far as
Oh,
costs. It also is a good deal for them if they come in as a web management client. They never have to pay for that license. So if I build the site, I include the license for the first year. If I do the hosting management, that license, well, it's all, so if I build the site, they always get the license. But if they need, I have so many different unlimited license. So I'm talking hundreds of plugins out there that I have an unlimited license for. So if someone in a web management plan says, "Hey, I need this enhancement," typically I have that already, and that's not going to
oh,
cost.
nice.
So with Yith Themes, we're grandfathered into their old monthly membership. So I still have that, which is awesome. Gravity Forms is unlimited license. B2B King, which is a wholesale suite, we have a lifetime license. Sales King, which is the sales rep side of that, have a lifetime license. So licensing, I mean, if you're going to try to pass all that to a customer, that's going to be hard. It's a much harder sell, in my opinion, if you can't absorb that cost on your own.
Very
So,
true. Very true.
and I can see where it might be tough if you're just starting out developer, you're doing freelance, having them pay for all those licensing. You don't have a lot of people on them, so obviously you can't pay for them. But that's like once you get established, consider it if you have 6 people that you're doing web management for and they have Gravity Forms, consider buying an unlimited license for them or at least having one of them pay for it, you know what I mean? And bill so you can buy an unlimited license because
I got you.
ideally that's a really good selling point down the road once you get established.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of do the same thing too. We have our, you know, default licenses that we own, such as what I mean by own is we have site licenses, right? Advanced custom fields, that's still widely utilized. Uh,
Yeah.
Gravity Forms as well. I'm
The
sorry, what's
custom
that?
fields, the
Advanced
custom
custom
fields.
fields, yeah. Which I think that was just acquired by WP Engine not too long ago.
Yeah. Anything that's acquired twice now, I believe. You
Oh,
know,
oh, I
that's
had no idea. Let me tell you, what a score with that plugin, man. But
yeah,
that plugin, let me tell you, we've been able to build some amazing stuff with advanced custom.
yeah. I use it a lot. That's one
That's
of
been
my
a
base
lifesaver, that
plugins.
plugin.
Yeah.
Yeah. But from the consumer side, when you're talking to a customer, or if you're a customer looking to get something built out, always find out if there's any licenses that you're gonna have to buy and maintain because it's very important. You
It's
want
hard to
to
come
be
back
able,
to the customer and say, hey, you need to purchase this now.
right. I mean, I can't tell you how many customers come over with licenses that haven't been purchased or expired,
Oh, all the time.
and
All the time.
we can't
Developers
update
will
their
just
website
shut it
because
off.
yeah, we can't update their website because it breaks because it's been so long, and
Yeah.
that's gonna cost you 2-3x.
That's another selling point if you already have that license. Oh, by the way, you have 4 plugins. You want to jump on the management plan? We'll save you this per year
That's
already.
from an agency standpoint, yeah, because
Right.
and especially for customers that aren't technical, it's a big advantage for them because they don't have to worry about anything. You know,
Yeah.
what is it like? We had a hosting company do a PHP. I know, I'm sorry, a MySQL update, and they sent a lot of our customers emails saying, "Hey, MySQL is going to update." 90% of customers didn't know what MySQL was, so we got bombarded with emails, support requests,
Yeah.
saying, "Guys, we need to do something about this."
That's what sucks too when the customer that has no technical experience is the one that has the email address entered in WordPress, so they get all the notices of
Oh my
stuff.
gosh, yeah, it's funny. How do you
It's
handle
like, dude, I
that?
immediately put ours in there, so they
Yeah,
just yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
When
and
you're
then so when we do web management, we turn off installing of plugins. Like we do a lot of things that can be detrimental to the website, like
yeah.
auto updating. Turn that stuff off right away. Like I don't let WordPress auto update anything because
Not even security.
so that's a tough one, man. Because like if it breaks the site and it's an e-commerce site and auto updates, whose
Very
fault
good
is it?
point. It's
It's
your
not
fault.
WordPress, it's
Yeah,
yours.
yeah.
So
That's a
we turn
very
that
good
shit
point.
off too.
Then what if your site gets hacked? It's a double-edged sword,
Well,
right?
we have 3 layers. We have security on the server, or not, sorry, the security is the one you mentioned. We have Immunify on the server.
Okay.
We typically use Patch Stack, which is like it's kind of like security, but it's really more firewall, I think, based. Like it like really specializes in that.
Yeah.
And then we'll use Malcare if the site's had issues before, and that's kind of like the security scanning or Defender, which is WPMU Def. But like we have, and then we do about 10 things to harden a website,
Sure.
like removing the WP config folder into the out of the root folder, like and changing the work WP-admin as your default. I mean, there's so many other things you can do that would deter a hacker saying, "Oh, this guy's not messing around. I'm not going to bother with him.
I
I'm
got
going to
you.
go to the next victim here."
I say.
So yeah, I think auto updates. Well, I've had it hit me, and I've had it break sites, and we got blamed for it. And I said, "Hey, this is an auto update," and they don't give a shit. They're like, "My site went down. I'm losing money. I don't care about WordPress and their auto update. Turn it off." Like I've had clients say that.
Yeah.
Like so
Yeah. So I know auto updates are off by default on WordPress, but not the security updates. Those get pushed on. But I know you can disable them in the
you
WP.
did, yeah, we disable them. Because I understand it's a security risk, but we also put in
Sure.
security measures
Well,
to,
look, I
and
mean, yeah,
we're up to date on it. So Patch Stack, which is really a reason I like them too, is they actually will tell us when there is a security update for anything, whether it be core files, WooCommerce, WordPress, and or the plugin. So I know right away my team gets a notification saying, "Hey, this plugin is vulnerable." We have to immediately update that then. So if that site was scheduled to be updated in a week, we updated it right then and there.
sure. I got you. All right, Judd. So this pretty much I guess wraps up the whole strategy section. I mean, look, there's always more stuff to talk about, but this is just sort of a general overview of that strategy phase. On our next podcast, we're going to be talking about the design phase, and it'll be much more straightforward, right? Because the design phase, you just have one objective, and that is to get design done, right?
Yeah.
So we won't be as much all over the place. Stay tuned for the next podcast. Once again, this is your co-host Carlos Caneja with Brite Code.
And this is Judd Dunagan from Brite Vessel. That wraps up Web Application Breakdown Episode 1, Part 2 Strategy. Stay tuned for Part 3 Design, where we'll talk about risk management, design, and user interface.